All right, let's start. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bertrand Souville. I'm working for Docomo, service provider in Japan. Thanks for joining this project update session for the Blazar project. Let me also introduce my co-speaker, Tetsuro Nakamura. He's one of the key upstream developers, so he's placement core, Blazar core, and also active in Nova development. So may I ask you, how many of you have ever heard about Blazar? Can you raise your hands? Okay, it's not too bad. So basically, Blazar provides a reservation as a service in OpenStack. For those of you who have been around for many years, it was originally named Climate Project. I was part of the team that actually revived this project at the summit in 2016, and we were quite happy to have, during the Queen release cycle, being part now of the official project in OpenStack. So even though Blazar has always had in their roadmap to support multiple resource types and not only compute resources, basically, so far, basically, we support reservation either of the whole host of instances, so Nova instances, for instance, to guarantee the availability of compute resources for future events. Well-known use cases that I think are still relevant, of course, telecom and AV industry, and would also mention testbed for cloud-based experimental research. And one very known example is the Chameleon project from the University of Chicago. For those of you who like statistics, so we also checked Stackalistic, and basically we have right now for the Stein cycle more than 20 submitters of patches to Blazar and roughly 30 reviewers. Of course, this also includes the community members that help us to achieve some community goals like patent-free or upgrade check. So some highlights for the Stein release cycle. So I think one of the good things that happened over the last 6 months, and this was also due to a good cooperation with some of the Neutron team members, is that we added floating IP reservation. But I should put a disclaimer here. This is still quite experimental. We still need to work on completing the spec, on extending the test coverage, writing a client code. Another important user feature, of course, for NAV use case is that we support now more affinity policies for instance reservation, and for this we leverage the work from Tetsuro by leveraging the placement API service. Of course, we also do not forget about our operators. We have added a new allocation API, so that, for instance, for the Chameleon project, where they basically reserve hundreds of nodes and they have multiple users, and it's easier for them to know the reserve state of their cloud resources. And this is my personal opinion, but I strongly believe that whenever it's possible, we should integrate and cooperate with the placement API. For instance, to have a more efficient scheduler and less intrusive integration with Nova. So how does Blazar work? Well, basically, if you have a laptop and if you know a bit of DevStack, basically it's quite easy to try Blazar project for instance reservation. The first thing that you have to do is to add one or more compute hosts that will be managed by Blazar. And what is happening in the background is Blazar is then asking the placement to create a new resource provider, which is a child provider. So when you set the command OpenStack resource provider list, basically the child provider is named Blazar test host, and of course you have a root provider, which is in our case the test host. So once this is done, of course you can use either the Blazar CLI or the dashboard, and here you can create a reservation with specific flavor sizing, and you may also right now also set the affinity to true, so that Blazar pickups hosts where there are enough capacity for those two instances. And again, here there are some background work where basically Blazar calls APIs in the placement and creates a custom flavor for the users to launch in the instances. And basically once the reservation starts, the user is able to access this flavor and to launch Nova instances using the flavor ID as shown here. So beyond Stein, so we have a lot of features. The first point is, I think, for some of us quite critical, because right now Blazar is not checking the quotas that may be set either by Nova or Neutron. So basically what may happen is end user may reserve more floating IPs than they may be allowed to. So this is something that we will look definitely during the train release cycle. Another important or hot topic right now is that we have heard from some operators that they would like to have some reservation of bare metal nodes. So this also depends on the discussion that will happen this week during the PTG, but we also are ready to be more compatible with Ironic. Another topic that may be also relevant is to have support for preemptible instances on unreserved resources. We also have a POC where basically we would like to add a network segment reservation, and basically we are ready to upstream this to the Blazar project. And finally, if we have enough resources, this was always in the roadmap, we would like also to have support for high availability deployments. So now I leave this to Tetsuo to explain more about the cross-project work with placement and Neutron.
So let me introduce about cross-project work. For instance reservation, we started using placement from Stein release. And thanks to this placement integration, we have got two improvements. First, it no longer depends on several Nova-specific filters, such as supergroup anti-affinity filters and aggregate instance extra spec filter and aggregate multi-tenancy isolation filter. And second, we have affinity policy supported. Namely, you can reserve multiple instances on the same host if you want performance, and on the different host if you want the availability. The next challenge is to use placement as well on host reservation too, which allows us to remove our specific Blazar filter on Nova side and to avoid host creation in Blazar. This means that in this challenge, operators don't have to separate Blazar hosts for reservation and non-Blazar hosts for non-reservation on setup of Blazar. And we also use Neutron for floating IP reservation, which we have got in Stein release. Here, user creates a floating IP reservation on Blazar with public network ID and amount and optionally specific IP address that the user wants. And then Blazar creates the floating IPs in that user's project via the Neutron API at the restart time so that the user can attach detach and delete the reserved IPs as usual. So this feature is not completed in Stein release. That said, we don't have update release API, CLI support, or documentation for this. So this is targeted in train release. And how to give feedback to us? Basically, we have IRC meetings once a week on Tuesday, and we decided to start additional meetings on America-friendly time 2 times a month on Thursday. And as well as other projects, we have OpenStack Blazar channel. So if you find any bugs, please report it to the Launchpad so that we can fix and review them. And we are always open-minded, and we welcome new contributors. To get started, the contributor guide will help you to learn how to commit to Blazar. And even if you don't have any specs to add, it would be nice if you help us on code review, bug triage, document improvement, and test coverage. And if you have any questions or if you want to contribute but has no idea what to do, please contact us on IRC. At least you can find us on IRC on the weekly meeting time. So, any questions?
So comparing this to Ironic, and so it seems like you reserve and then you can add more resources to OpenStack using Blazar. Is that the concept behind Blazar?
Exactly. In Stein release, we have no insurance it works with Ironic, but we at least support instance reservation and host reservation without Ironic, and we support network floating IP reservation. And we have an architecture of plugin architecture of such a resource types, so you can add any resources you want if you want. Does that answer your question?
So in my understanding, I think you can use the same resource between 2 separate clouds. So one can reserve and use it. Once done, it's available for any other cloud, like OpenStack instance to use it. The diagram you had where it was Blazar and Nova, it said reserve and then refer. Yeah, that one. So from what I understand is you reserve and then Nova will register that resource. Is that correct?
Yeah, Blazar at first register reservation to placement, and Nova and Blazar gives the reservation ID to users, and the user uses that reservation ID to deploy virtual machine via Nova. And Nova uses that reservation ID to talk to placement to get allocation candidates.
Would it be possible for Blazar to have, when the customer make a reservation, to not specify every CPU, RAM, etc., but have the flavor, use the flavor that are available globally?
Yeah, I think this answers your question. At first, user creates, for example, in instance reservation, user creates a list, which is a reservation via Blazar, specifying I need an instance with vCPUs 1 and memory, 1,000 megabyte memory and 20 gigabyte disk, and then Blazar finds and then Blazar creates a flavor for this specific request.
Yeah, but my question would be more so that the customer don't explicitly specify the CPU, memory, disk, but give us a reference, a flavor that already exists as a reference, so that it's just copy and it's just more simpler.
Yeah, now you should just copy manually to this.
Basically, what they would like to just use a specific variety.
Okay.
When you actually create the list.
There's another good reason for this as well, and that's when you have extra specs in long distance
Mhm.
types that you want the users to use as well, but you can't expect the users to do it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, that's yeah, I think it's
I mean, this is of course doable, but right now it's not supported.
Yep. So one. Yep.
You talked about quotas, and you talked about quotas in terms of no quota, is that right?
No. So we don't handle quota so far, and we don't support Flavor's extra specs because the pain point in Blazar so far is we should use Blazar's mini scheduler for scheduling instance to reserve, not placement. So we need to use placement to get allocation reservation in the future. Yep.
I was more interested in having quotas on the amount of reservations that a project could
Yep.
ask for at the time,
Right.
like the length of the reservation security net.
Yep.
Just, if I want to open it up to our hot cloud, then someone could just reserve everything for, all time.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
actually
it's a German feature of us.
Actually, to be fair, quotas still exist even with Blazar. The problem is just that when you make a reservation, you don't verify the quota. So you're going to be OP. That's probably why if you only want to use Blazar for the specific project points, you use specific quotas. Because then when you make a reservation, you just expect Blazar wants you to quotas. So when the list starts, if your quotas are not okay, then you force the list to be fair. That's basically the point. So you can basically work on it just by using a specific project point. Which would be like saying, okay, that's fair enough, I'm just picking enough place in terms of products just for that, so that I'm pretty sure that everybody is, I'm like over-promising what I can get, so that's probably one way of working on this until at least that's actually works.
Yeah.
I think if you were to do compatibility with Ironic, you probably would need to change the way that reservations are requested in terms of instead of, like I was saying about using a flavor instead of the number of CPUs and RAM, because a bare metal node doesn't advertise CPUs and RAM, it advertises the custom resource.
Yep. Any questions? Any comments?
Have you looked at any integration with Mistral?
Sorry?
I'm just curious if anybody's looked at any integration with Mistral so that you could have
Mistros.
instances automatically created when the release becomes valid.
Yes, maybe in preemptible instance, to enable preemptible instances, maybe Mistral is a good candidate to collaborate with Blazar. Any comments or questions? Okay, that concludes the presentation. Thank you for listening and coming.